Hello. As you may already be aware, yesterday, 25th of February 2021, Creative Assembly announced a new, fairly large DLC for Total War 3 Kingdoms. For a rundown of the initial announcement, as well as the information on features that were outlined in that post, check out yesterday's video on the topic. CA have made another announcement today, providing us with a better look at what to expect from the new gameplay mechanics and factions added by the DLC. I would like to preface this video, however, by saying that unfortunately I don't have any exclusive access to the game or contact directly with Sega or CA, so all of the gameplay footage we're about to look at comes directly from that which the devs and or publisher have made public, and have added links to their Twitter and YouTube posts below if you would like to check them out for yourself. That being said, they have given us quite a bit to work with and get excited about, so I'm looking forward to breaking it down with you right here. The first thing that is immediately all but confirmed is the starting position for the newly playable Liu Yan Faction. This is a faction that was technically in the game before under the name Liu Yan, but they were the epitome of generic, with no unique mechanics and were not playable. The faction started out around the same spot in the base game, so although many factions have had their starting positions altered in the 200 CE start date, it appears Liu Yan or Liu Zhang's position will remain unchanged. The unique character, Liu Yan, is also a new addition with the DLC, and the new post from CA confirms his constant starting skills, items and traits. Now, I say constant because these are things that do not appear to be influenced by chance in the way that almost everything else in the game is. I think it's safe to assume that this is Liu Yan's starting state, as the advisor speech in the top right hand corner is very reminiscent of the dialogue given to every other faction at the beginning of their campaign, and Shu has the little star symbol on it indicating that it's his capital city. Though these are things that have been inferred and not directly confirmed. It is also possible that changes will be made before the DLC's release on the 11th of March to give Liu Yan more unique ancillaries or character specific buffs. As it stands right now, we can see that he is of the strategist class, he has unique bound armour, and starts at level 2, with the traits ambitious, superstitious and deceitful. The ambitious trait provides +8 authority and comes with the negative effect of increased penalty from desire for higher office. It also provides +5 income from all sources in the administrative commandery, and an increased ambition to gain independence as an administrator. +8 authority is very nice for a faction leader, as it will help to influence the overall satisfaction of characters within the faction. Usually this trait would have no downside when it's present on a faction leader. However, due to this particular faction's mechanics, this trait could prove to be rather interesting, and we'll discuss why when we get to the faction mechanics themselves. Superstitious provides +6 resolve, +2 instinct, and can trigger random superstition events. Not quite as interesting as authority for this particular faction, but it does mean that it'll be somewhat more hardy than your typical strategist, which is always nice. Finally, deceitful has a focus on cunning, providing +6 to the cunning stat, +2 instinct and +5% attrition to enemy armies in the administrative commandery, and +10 morale for his own army when defending. Cunning is the bread and butter of a strategist and gives a nice boost to ammunition for ranged units in his retinue, and the extra +2 instinct means that Liu Yan will not only be more sturdy than most strategists, but combined with the +2 instinct from the superstitious trait, he'll pack a slightly better punch too. While there is currently no information on the effects from Liu Yan's character subtype, Opportunistic Ruler, seen here directly under his name, we can see that his actual cunning stat is very close to 100, meaning with a few decent items that buff this stat, or a couple of level ups with the right skill choices, it won't be difficult to give Liu Yan legendary character status. His skill tree also shows that he has the strategist specific boost of +12 cunning and +10% character experience, as well as resourcefulness, giving +8 cunning and crucially enabling flaming shot with siege equipment, and +10 military supplies in enemy territory, which are already unlocked in his starting state. Here we can see some of the faction specific objectives for Liu Yan, almost all of which is centered around his unique faction resource aspiration, which we'll get to shortly. We can also see here that this faction introduces the concept of an inheritance timeline. This is where the ambitious trait could become very interesting. Liu Yan can choose to pass the leadership of the faction onto his heir at various points in time, which I can only assume means he would remain in the faction, but only as a character and not as the leader. With the ambitious trait and former faction ownership at therefore usually a fairly high level, it is likely that he will want a higher core position, and if he's appointed as an administrator for example, this trait also makes it more likely that he will request independence. This could potentially result in a separate Liu Yan faction under vassalage to his once heir, Liu Yan, as well as some other interesting developments such as him leaving the faction due to dissatisfaction and holding a grudge against his son. Not something that's entirely unheard of in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. I'm looking at you, Liu Biao and Shi Tzu, but still, it's just a little something that could very well make a campaign a little bit more interesting. It's also worthy of note that the longer you take to bestow inheritance of the faction onto your heir, the worse things are going to get for you, with some faction crippling debuffs being applied in the later stages of the inheritance timeline. I personally really like this trade-off effect. I'm not a fan of overpowered anything, let alone faction mechanics. Looking at you, Jingjiang. It's okay because you're pretty. So having some real challenges instilled within the faction mechanic itself should make for some really fun and difficult playthroughs. Finally, we get to the faction unique resource, Aspiration. The way this mechanic seems to work, based on the information released so far by CA, is that it can be stockpiled via making trade-offs. An example of a trade-off is shown here with market protectionism. This lowers the trade influence of the Liu Yan faction, reducing the value of trade agreements and lowering income, but rewarding the player with more aspiration as the debuffs increase. Accumulated aspiration points can be used to purchase bonuses for the faction heir, in this case Liu Yan by default, though usually this is a position that can be altered based on the player's decisions, so may not be set in stone. Bonuses are unlocked by completing tasks, and we can see two such tasks here. The Shining Capital, the objective being to have a city of level 6 or higher. The reward is 1 turn construction on the first building constructed after the effect is enabled. This could be incredibly powerful for higher end buildings, which could take upwards of 7 turns to complete normally, but does have a cooldown of 20 turns once used. So some forward planning will be essential to ensure that you maximise this ability, as time is an ever-present threat to Liu Yan's playstyle. Swelling Domain, however, has an objective of owing 10 commanderies and 15 turn cooldown, but also has a duration of 15 turns too. Therefore, it could theoretically be reactivated immediately after it expires. It is important to note, however, that Liu Yan is racing against the clock to build aspiration and pass the torch to his heir before the delayed inheritance debuffs become powerful enough to wreck his faction. So he must constantly struggle against adversity of trade-offs to gain aspiration, while simultaneously completing task objectives to unlock bonuses, which can then be purchased with the aspiration points and ultimately passed on to his heir in a timely fashion to ensure his faction is in the best possible position upon his passing. This is one of the more complex faction mechanics that exist within the game, at least among those we know about so far, and it certainly seems like it's going to reward players who love a good challenge, a group within which I am included. So I'm very excited about the changes coming with this DLC and this newly playable faction. As an honourable mention, however, I do want to say that one of my favourite things about Fates Divided is up there in the top right hand corner. They've finally given Cao Ren a unique artwork. It's about bloody time. In the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Cao Ren is not particularly impressive when compared to some of the other legendary characters, but he's a very stable and constant part of the story, and was pivotal to Cao Cao's success throughout, so I'm pleased to see the old boy getting some love. I did notice too, just by his battle icon, he seems to have been made a commander now, which previously he was a sentinel. It's possible that this is simply an oversight and will be corrected by the release date, but I doubt it. Cao Ren's character in the story is more fitting of a commander anyway, and with the DLC being so close to release, I'd have to imagine something like that would have been ironed out already, if it were a mistake. So, thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video and would like to catch more regular updates, hit subscribe and like the video. I've also got a Let's Play series if you'd like to check it out, a beginner-centric tutorial series if you're interested in how-to Total War, and a lore series too if you'd like to know a little bit more about the characters and the story that make up this great game. Thanks again, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye bye now.